All right, I hate being the ones between like you and alcohol, so I'll try to make this brief. But last year I was between everybody and the beach, so I feel like there's a theme going. They're keeping me in between you all in a good time. But today I'm going to talk about using Playbooks to drive innovation. I'm DeVaris. I'm a director of product at Heroku. And so I'll just give you a little preview about what you'll learn today. You'll learn actually what is a playbook, what are plays, why it's important to develop a playbook for your organization, how to create your own playbook. And I wanted to start off with this quote, right? If any of you all have read the seven, I forgot what it was, like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The author Stephen Covey said this, and I tend to agree with it, right? Like most leaders would agree, they'd be better off having an average strategy with superb execution than superb strategy with poor execution, all right? So let's talk about a long time ago. I was writing this talk and thinking about it like, man, I've been developing for about 20 years now. All right, started off as a classic ASP developer on their site back in the first .com days called MVP.com. And we were an e-commerce site. I had to write a whole bunch of classic ASP, ATL.com, C++ code to handle payment processing because, you know, like Stripe and Braintree wasn't a thing back then. Actually had to call up banks to process credit cards and things. It was really, really, really the dark ages of the internet, right? When Michael Jordan wanted to have a sale, right, we'd have to, you know, go to a data center and actually rack up servers. I still have calluses on my fingers. But if any of you all remember what happened way back when, how to develop software, it was this ugly thing called waterfall, right? Where essentially, and this is really the process of developing software that said, made me want to become a product manager. I was talking to somebody earlier, I think his name was Mario, and we were just saying that product managers are really good at defining requirements and just throwing them over the fence. And so when I worked at Microsoft, right, when we actually had box software, how many of y'all remember buying like Windows XP in a store or something like that, right? This was the pattern, right? Some group of folks, an architect maybe, would get together in a room and say, all right, well, this is what the product is going to be. This is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to function. You went down all of these steps, and then at the end, you would deliver something probably that's, you know, a little bit over budget, over time, and customer moods that shift during that time, right? And then God forbid that you wanted to actually make a change to that, right? You had to go through some sort of change management process, right? Where, you know, there was somebody that was, I forget, ITIL or change management authority that would approve your changes throughout the time because, you know, previously it had already been baked in. Like, this is exactly what we're doing. There's not gonna be any changes, right? And that whole thing was just a little bit painful, right? And so in 2001, something happened. There was a big seismic shift. It wasn't the Space Odyssey. It wasn't the best album of all time. 17 guys got in a room and said, you know what? Waterfall sucks. We have to do something a little bit different, right? And so they said that, you know, individuals' interactions over processes, just get something shipped versus actually having comprehensive documentation. Got to talk to customers. And then you actually have to respond to changes instead of sticking vehemently to a plan, all right? And so if you think about this kind of shift in the world, right, it's like a pendulum. On one side, we got waterfall, which is just, you know, it's like very, very prescriptive. On the other side, you have agile, which is like process is bad. But at the end of the day, right, you're still following the ceremonies of agile, right? We do stand-ups, we do scrum, and all that good stuff, right? But at the end of the day, right, it's one of those things where the pendulum has kind of swung way too far, right? And so, you know, you have a whole, on the right side, you have this big upfront plan, big architecture that a lot of the traditional projects follow. On the left-hand side, you have no plan, no architecture, which a lot of the agile practitioners do, right? And you kind of want to be somewhere in the middle where there's like an adaptive plan and an adaptive architecture so that it actually maps to what your customers want. So if I were to ask you all, like, how would you build a new product, what would the answer be? Right? Well, it should be, it depends, all right? And so it depends on a lot of these things, right? Who's the customer? How much money do we have? What are the available resources? You know, what is our competition doing? You know, who has the expertise to deliver this thing? How much time do we have, right? And you have to start thinking about, like, it's not necessarily a rigid process, right? I can tell you, you know, everybody knows, like, all right, well, I have my bag of tricks that I dip into every time that I start a project, but that's not something that's been widely spread out to the team. And waterfall is too structured because, you know, it came back from manufacturing, right? It's like there's one way to deliver a car. There's one way to build a widget, right? And so that's how we're going to repeat this all the time. But as we saw, that there's all these things that you have to consider when you actually are building a project. So this is why we need things that are called playbooks. So I played football in college, played football in high school, American football, not soccer. And so one of the like revolutionary, most innovative coaches is a guy named Bill Walsh. And what he would do is every game, he had about 15 to 25 plays that he would run. Every game, right? So it literally took away the responsibility for them to worry about, like, hey, how do we react to decisions in real time, right? So the quote goes, scripting is planning, it's contingency planning. The fewer decisions made during the game, the better. You don't want to live by your instincts. It's isolating each situation that comes up and establishing what comes up. So he would basically have set plays that he would run just to see how people react to it. Not unlike software, right? So what is a playbook? I kind of just ripped this off of the internet. Internet. It's a-coming. Oh, man. 1 second. Well, we'll see if it's, oh, I'm offline now. Wonderful. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Having some technical difficulties. If all of you all can turn off your phones at this point in time. No. That's all good. All right, let me hit percent. All right, here we go. Cool. So, what is a playbook? It could be one or more plays in book form. It's a notebook containing diagram football plays. Like, this is really specific. It was interesting, I saw this on the internet. And the third one, right, a stock of usual tactics or methods. So, probably gonna take a look at the first and third definition, all right? This is what a football coach sees every day, right? If you look at the yellow headings, right, it's the scenario. Underneath it are the plays, actually, to attack those scenarios. And then and those are in the red. And then the blue is just kind of like general areas, all right? And then all the way to the right, you'll see a heading that says this week. This is what these are the first scripted plays, all right? And so really what this slide is showing you is, like, you know, even in football, they have a scenario, they have like kind of known things that they're gonna go attack with, and they're just gonna go execute. So why would you need a playbook? Well, the first thing is that you want to document how do you build a product in your organization, all right? The second thing is it's a shared language across the organization. It decreases the amount of confusion, right? So if somebody comes and say, hey, how do I do X? You have a way to do X, right? And it helps new people, it helps old, you know, people that have been there for a while, right? Because one person's knowledge, the thing that's stuck in your brain, that can't scale, all right? And the last thing that it does is that it gives you and understanding how to handle processes, well, situations with common tools and processes. Seriously? All right. So I did this. All right. All right. Jeez. All right, so what's a play? Play is an agreed upon set of actions that a team takes in a given situation. So it's not necessarily a prescriptive process, it's just a framework, right? How many of y'all are Rails developers out here, right? You know, nobody uses Rails or Express or Sinatra, right? Like there's a number of ways that you can go attack, or Spring. I know there's probably some Java developers out here. What a framework does is it gives you the foundation to go attack a problem, right? It doesn't say you have to solve it exactly in this way, but it gives you a good process for going, a good foundation for going to do that. It's not a step-by-step instruction manual, right? It's just, this is exactly, you know, here's the parameters of how we can solve it. You choose within that how you actually want to go do it. And so if I look at, you know, the definition of plays, right, like there's an infinite number of things that we can do, right? And so as a product manager, for me, it's like, you know, I think about my world in kind of these buckets, right? Like, you know, when I want to go build something, when I want to go launch something, if I need to go grow something, if I need to test something, there's a number of strategies that I can use that would allow me to solve my issue. So again, let me ask this question, like how would you go build a new product? How many of y'all have a defined definition of how to go do that? I see a lot of heads shaking, all right? So again, remember it depends, all right? So there's no one right way to go do that. It's like if I asked a pilot, how do you fly a plane? They would be like, it depends. Is it rainy out? Is there a strong headwind? Is there a strong tailwind? Like, what size plane? How many passengers? What's the cargo, right? Like, there are all these questions that you have to do. But you know that you need to go build a new product. And so, in the PM world, right, there's these like paradigms called, this is the double diamond way of double diamond product delivery, right? So you think about the world in 4 buckets: discover, define, develop, and deliver, right? Underneath it, and the reason why it's called double diamonds, because obviously it looks like a diamond, there's 2 of them, but this process is circular, right? You're always continuously evolving, you're always continuously iterating, right? But underneath it, you have a bunch of things that you can go do in each of the buckets. So how do you create a playbook for your organization? So you start with the scenarios first. I actually took this from like how we develop product at Heroku, but what are the things that you do all the time? Like as software engineers, your job is to automate anyway, right? Like you feel like if you've run a manual script on the command line a bunch of times, or run a manual command, right? Like eventually you're just gonna write a script that responds to something, right? Like you automate it, right? And so this is what you do. You start thinking about, from a process standpoint, what are all the choke points? What are all the places where we slow down? And so at Heroku, here are a few of the things that we did, right? The problems that we had. How do we kick off a new feature? How do we release a feature to customers under a beta, right? Do we do canary deploys? Do we do feature flags? Like, how does that happen? Like, how do we identify the customer segment that we want to release a beta to? Once that feature's out, how do we handle customer feedback? What channels does that come through? If it comes through sales, does it come through our support channel? Does it come through actual product feedback? How do we measure feature failure or success? And then if it's going really bad, how do we deprecate it, right? And so inside of the product lifecycle, these are things that we saw ourselves doing again and again and again. So how do you create a play? Well, first thing is you gotta give it a descriptive name. You have to detail the scenario on when to actually use it. show why you would use this play, right? And so a lot of people will say, all right, well, here's what you do, but don't give the people actually why you do it so they understand how to apply it. And then you account for edge cases. So this is my playbook that I created for Heroku, right? And so if you remember the double diamond slide, it was broken down into 4 areas. But for us, it's basically 3, right? You can always evolve and refine. But it's discovery, development, and delivery. And so underneath discovery, a couple things that we do all the time is that we have to qualify what the actual product and the problem that we're going to go solve. And then we need to go validate that without writing a ton of code, right? And then underneath that, we have our required artifacts. So what are the things that we produce before we move on to the next stage, right? And so underneath that is, the first thing that we do under discovery is that we look at usage data. We look at competitive analysis. We do customer interviews, Part of Agile is go talk to your customers. We actually do some sort of persona identification, right? So we have a notion of who we're building for internally, and every single time, we make sure that that person is getting, or a group of people are getting accounted for, and their needs are getting accounted for whatever it is that we build. And then we do this thing called Moscow, right? With must have, should have, could have, won't have, right? It's just a prioritization thing. And that's based off of what the persona needs and what the market is telling us what to do. And then once we figure that out, right, then we build a product requirements document. It's a rough outline of what is it that we're going to build, what are we not going to build, who needs to be involved, what are the things that we need to account for. And then we work with the engineering team to make sure that it's technically feasible. While that's going on, and notice, this isn't a linear process, right? There's a lot of collaboration. A lot of folks are going to be working together on this. But once the PRD's out, then we go to the validation, right? We build low fidelity prototypes, get it out in front of customers to make sure that, our trusted customers, make sure this is something that they would actually buy. Because at the end of the day, you want people to purchase, you want people to use, all right? And then we do something like an internal press release, right? And so with that, it's before we haven't even written any code yet, right? We haven't even done a roadmap. We haven't even got to backlog yet. And then we should have enough information to say go, no go at this point in time, and we haven't really written any code. So if people say yes, then we move on to the blue section, which is development. And in there, that's basically where we start building the story. So each persona has a journey that they're going to take. And then from that, we build a roadmap based off of business needs, whatever it is, all right? And then that's how we start. We work together with the engineering team to say, okay, well, is there tech debt? Is there, what's prior art? Do we have components that have been built already? Work with the design team at this point, right? To actually take those prototypes and the feedback that we got from the customer interviews to flesh that out into more high fidelity mock-ups. And then we just deliver the thing after that, right? So after that, Heroku's pretty data-driven. I shouldn't say data-driven, but we collect a lot of metrics. Yeah, we don't use those metrics for anything useful at this point, but we just collect them, right? Because someday they're going to be important. But we measure the effectiveness and the usage at that point, right? Just to make sure that people are actually using the thing. And this is how we actually deliver a feature. But the interesting thing is about Heroku is that we have playbooks for everything, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be just for feature delivery. So we have onboarding playbooks. We have, interview playbooks. We have playbooks for our support team and our DevOps team, right? So when situations happen. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of you all are pretty familiar with that, but from a product perspective, there are a few things that you want to do as best practice, right? So first thing is you have to instill a culture of leaving artifacts. If it's stuck up in here, that's bad. You want to be able to make sure that knowledge scales across your organization. So you have to instill a culture of leaving artifacts. That once somebody figures something out, once there's an edge case that somebody's like, hey, I solved this problem and it was kind of cool how I did it, then you want to be able to say, hey, you probably need to write that thing down. Other good thing to do is make it highly visible and easily searchable, right? And so at that point, it's like when the new person comes on or somebody's like, hey, I'm trying to go solve this problem, the support person's like, hey, does this, what's the usage? How does this product actually work? What are its dependencies, right? You don't always have to be the one to go answer that, right? You want to focus on the things that you're the best at, and answering Slacks, emails, phone calls, meetings about things that should be written down is probably not the best usage of your time. There's always going to be edge cases, right? There's always going to be scenarios that people have not accounted for. And so when those situations occur, again, in this culture of leaving artifacts, encourage people to add their own place to the playbook, right? And like I said before, is that each org, each team should have their own playbooks for how they attack a problem. And periodically, measure the effectiveness of the playbooks and adjust if necessary. So, in closing, you all learned today what is a playbook, right? It's just a set of prescriptive things to do when you are attacked with the scenario. You learned what the plays are, right? And so you also learned today why is it important to develop a playbook for your organization, right? It's all about scale. It's all about increasing the knowledge share. And I gave you some tips on how to create your own playbook. So thank you for enduring all of the technical difficulties. I will see you all later tonight. Let's have a good time, and thank you.